welcome to show 4 of Idtv 2013. I'm Lee O'Brien.
And I'm Rocio Lopez. We have a lot of amazing stuff to show you guys today.
Did you know that nearly a century before Rosa Parks sat where she did on a bus, a San Francisco local sued for the right to sit on a cable car? In a few moments, you'll find out if she won. She's just one of many African-American pioneers we talk about.
How many pieces of technology do you juggle lately? I mean, not literally, but you know. Now, we have some interesting gadgets to show you that just might make your life easier. After that, we look at technological advances of transportation over the years.
In our Sports Minute, we interview 2 members of City College of San Francisco's badminton team, which has won various national championships. We also examine the role of power in comic books. And to close the show, we have music from the local band, the Dandelions. Could you imagine what San Francisco would be like without CCSF?
No, never, never.
This season, Idtv has followed the saga of accreditation at City College. This time we look at how CCSF students contribute to life in San Francisco. Here's a short segment that shows how many CCF students get hired for a multitude of jobs all over the city.
Over the past year, City College has been dealing with an accreditation crisis. In March, they had to submit a report as to what they would do if the school were to close. I spoke with department chairs and members of the community to see how important these programs are and how they would feel if City College were to close.
The culinary program has been around for over 70 years. It's why we have such a strong reputation in the industry. But clearly, because we have been here for a long time, economic value that we bring to the industry is unmeasurable in many ways. So the graduating class last semester of 42 students, every one of them is working in the industry. They're blogging, they're writing cookbooks, they're the line cook at La Folie, they're the line cook at Delfina, they are the manager at Nopalita, they are the manager at one of the pizzerias, they are the host at Quince, they're everywhere. We have a lot of very well-known graduates. Conley, the owner of Cowgill Creamery, Jeff Hannock, the owner of Nopa and Nopalita, Sam, the owner of Buy Right.
We started with 6 employees. You know, we currently have 120 people working here at the 18th Street store. On the block, and this is like one of the things that I'm most proud of, there was less than 40 people working on this block in all the commercial storefronts, and right now there's well over 400 people working on this one single block and to me that's like what a neighborhood business should do, right? It should be an anchor, it should be a draw, and it should create synergy amongst the other businesses that exist, and create an identity for it.
What do you think of the possibility of City College closing?
Freaks me out. You know, when I think about what an important resource City has been, not only to me, but so many people on my staff throughout the history. And it's not just staff members that went through the culinary arts program, but you know, people who go there to learn English. You know, we've had so many immigrants from various cultures who have utilized City as a resource for really assimilating into society and to getting a foundation for which they can build their lives on.
Something like 281,000 San Franciscans were not born in the United States. But a lot of them are recent immigrants, and a lot of them have been here 30 years and don't really speak English. We've counted about 136 languages of our students. A lot of our students work in healthcare, childcare, hotel and restaurant, also construction to some point. For the non-credit student, the classes are free. This is something that California, I think, should be proud of. We're the last state in the union that does not charge for non-credit instruction. There is talk of changing that right now in Sacramento.
I feel like we are blessed because we don't have to pay at all to learn English. This is our community, and different races could be successful without City College. It's very important. It's something like us. It's our key to have our kids or our communities get successful.
What do you think the effect would be on the ESL community if City College were to close?
People wouldn't be learning English anymore, or they could learn English at because of the size of our program, there is no organization in San Francisco, even if they wanted to, that could take up the slack.
Cities is accessible and it's equitable, and every community needs an educational foundation like that to be able to thrive.
In June, the ACCJC will respond to whether City College will be able to keep its accreditation or not. Either way, it's hard to imagine San Francisco without City College. At its Mission campus, I'm Sherae Honeycutt for Etc. Magazine and Idtv.
With the loss of accreditation, many students would lose vital opportunities. It was a sense of a better life and opportunity that brought black men and women to the West in the 1840s. They migrated to California in search of gold, freedom, and a land to call their own. By the mid-1850s, a lively African-American community had taken root in San Francisco, which included churches, businesses, and schools. Educator Jan Batiste Adkins has spent the last 5 years researching and documenting the history of San Francisco's African-American pioneers. Through newspapers of the 1850s to the 1890s, she discovered many stories of what life was like for the first black settlers of the city. Ms. Batiste Adkins is our guest today. Let's welcome her to the show. Jan, thank you so much for joining us.
Well, I'm really happy to be here to share my work with you.
Absolutely. It's a pleasure to have you here. Now, this book is truly chock-filled of rich history and amazing facts. And there's been an African-American presence here in San Francisco since before the gold rush. Who was the first African-American to settle in San Francisco, and what brought them here?
Well, through my research, I found out that William Alexander Leavesdorf was the very first African-American to come to San Francisco and establish a home here. He lived, of course, in what was known as Yerba Buena, because San Francisco was not, California was not a state yet. It was still under the Mexican territory. So William Alexander Leavesdorf was a steamship captain, and he was very instrumental in starting schools. He started the very first hotel here in San Francisco, but he died right before the gold rush days, and so he didn't get a chance really to benefit from the gold rush. But he was a very wealthy man, and his business partner then decided that it was necessary to go back to St. Croix, which is where Alexander Leavesdorf was from, and to visit his mother, and then to let her know about the death of her son and let her know about the wealth. Well, when he went to St. Croix, he found out that she was a black woman, and of course she was married to, his father was a European, and so with that knowledge, he went back to San Francisco and, of course, left a little bit of money for the mother, but then the rest of the money was divided up among the other business partners.
So it almost sounds like his own business partner didn't know he was black because his mother was black and his father was European. That's really interesting that he was able to move forward and not have anyone know that he was black. Now, what was it like to write this book?
Well, it was really fascinating. I found out so many interesting stories about the pioneers. Many of the people I'd read about in the black newspapers, but I didn't know who they were, what they looked like, or anything about their history or their stories. And so I spent a couple of years just researching their stories and reading about their lives, and it was just fascinating. At that point, I wanted to share my knowledge with other people, and I thought that, well, you know, what better way but to put it in a book. And so that's what we have now, the history of these people.
Now, back in the 1850s and the 1860s, the city was the city. It was the place for the movers, the shakers, and everything in between, even back then. Who were some of these noted citizens, and what impact did they have on early San Francisco?
Well, of course, we had Mifflin Gibbs and Philip Alexander Bell, and they were responsible for developing the first newspaper. Mifflin Gibbs started the Mirror of the Times, and then Philip Bell was responsible for the Pacific Appeal and the Elevator. Then we have Mary Pleasant, who came in the 1850s, and she also was very instrumental as a woman in starting a home for girls in San Francisco. And then there were others who started the black churches, John Jameson Moore, and then there were others. And so Archie Lee was also a very important person during that time. He was a fugitive slave that actually sought to find, wanted to find freedom here in San Francisco. And through his court case, he was finally freed, and he did not have to go back into slavery. And then there were George Jameson, who traveled and established the Zion Church. So there were many, many people.
That's amazing. It sounds like we've just barely scratched the surface. We'll have to have you back another time. Thank you so much for being our guest today. Up next, we'll look at the least amount of gadgets that students need to carry around to function on a daily basis.
We're such friends, but in the end, was it all just pretend? Doesn't matter what I say. Everything's gonna change right before it stays the same.